Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar titled Harnessing the Power of Value Streams with DevOps expert Marc Hornbeek. First, I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce you to the Learning Tree Anywhere platform. If you've ever participated in a Learning Tree class as a live virtual attendee, you'll recognize this layout. You will see that our presenter, Marc, is in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Hi there, Marc. Below Marc is
Hello,
our
how are
chat
you?
box. This is where you can participate in questions or comments. In the top middle, you'll see the presentation, and below that are some poll questions. Please take a moment to answer those poll questions if you haven't already, as we'd love to know more about you. And with that, it's now my privilege to introduce our subject matter expert for the day, Marc Hornbeek. Marc, if you could take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself, and
Thank you,
then we can
Jen.
get started.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Jen. And thank you, Learning Tree, for the opportunity to do this. It's one of my favorite topics. I think it's value stream management and value stream mapping are critical tools that can really help a lot and a lot of different things, certainly with DevOps and related things. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my wisdom in this area and experience. So yeah, I'm Marc Hornbeek. Some people refer to me as DevOps the Gray. Maybe it's because I wear these funny gray hats or I have gray hair, or but I like to think it's just because they respect my experience. I've been involved in. I would claim I've been doing DevOps for 47 years, long before it was called DevOps, meaning that I have spent most of that time thinking and working on automation of software development lifecycle and delivery and development and delivery cycles and all the things associated with that. Fundamentally, through that experience, I have a lot of stories I could tell. We don't have time for all of them, but be glad to share with you offline anytime. I'm the CEO and principal consultant of a little boutique consulting firm called Engineering DevOps Consulting. I'm the author of this book you see here called Engineering DevOps, I wrote it a couple of years back to answer a frustration that I kept hearing, like, wait a minute, we're trying to do DevOps. We don't know why we're not getting the results that people say we should. How do we, do it? How do we make improvements? And certainly, the book is a little unusual in that it's a prescriptive approach to help you achieve your goals for DevOps step by step. And part of that is a chapter on value stream management and value stream mapping, so it is relevant. That book is, by the way, available in ebook form to anyone that's attending this webinar. Jen will explain to you how to get a copy later, but that's obviously, I'm biased, but I think it's a good book for that. I am also available for communication if you ever want to talk to me at mhornbeek@engineeringdevops.com. There's lots of tools and other information and resources available for free. Mostly the things that I've found useful over the years related to DevOps and related things like DevSecOps and SRE and continuous testing. So at www.engineeringdevops.com. I'm also an ambassador and one of the course authors for the DevOps Institute's series of courses. And of course, I'm an instructor for Learning Tree. I'm also an IEEE engineer, 47 years. I was rated as an outstanding engineer in 2016. And I take a very engineering approach to these things. And certainly, value stream mapping is something that I've used throughout much of my career in one form or another, even before I realized it was called value stream mapping. The idea of having a blueprint for something and then a big picture and using that as a way to help understand and manage things is something that I found useful over my career. So having said that, let's get started into the meat of the subject. Let's see if I can move the slide. So what are you going to learn in this webinar? Well, hopefully a few things. Why is value stream mapping important and how is it done? For some reason the slide skipped. Why is value stream management important and how is it done? And that's a little confusing. The words seem awfully similar. Mapping and management are two different things, and we're going to talk about that, even though the acronyms are the same. I will explain some examples through my own consulting work that I've encountered and worked on with value stream management and value stream mapping, and leave you with some ideas of how to get started, how to apply value stream management and mapping in your environment. Okay, so what is value stream mapping? Why is it important? And how is it done? So first of all, I would point out there's a link on this slide. I put up a slide share, provides in some detail how to use templates and different things that are available from my website, and also on SlideShare give you some step-by-step instructions of how to do this. We don't have time to go through all of those details in this short webinar. So what is a value stream map, a VSM, emphasis on the word map? It's a tool, right? It's essentially just a simple, if you like, tool for visualizing value streams. What is a value stream? A value stream is nothing other than a series of steps. Each step is supposed to identify something that's adding value from one state to the end state. So this could be software development, where at the beginning you're trying to decide what you want to develop, and at the end you're delivering something in operating software that matches the requirement. So at every step in that value stream, you're adding some value. You're trying to make improvements along the way that ultimately result in a really good, well-engineered product. I didn't invent it, certainly. There's a long history between value stream, for value stream mapping methodologies. The concepts mostly were derived from lean engineering and lean manufacturing and business process engineering over the years. And more recently, it's been applied to DevOps and continuous delivery pipelines and things that are basically value streams. I will point out a book, not my book, Value Stream Mapping. This is, sorry, I can't see it, by Karen Martin and Mike Osterling. It's not really targeted to DevOps, by the way, but it can give you a lot of the background around value stream management and value stream, well, mostly value stream mapping. The book is about mapping, not so much about management, but they definitely relate, and you'll see that. A typical value stream for DevOps may have many steps. What you're seeing here is just an example. Backlog grooming, development of software, integration, delivery, deployment, operate. That's a simple, pretty generic looking value stream for a DevOps application pipeline. And believe me, there are many variations of that depending on your organization and what your application needs and all of that. This is my view of what I call the big picture blueprint for DevOps. If you ever looked at my book, you'd see that this is up front and center. There's lots of blueprints in the book, but this is the overall big picture blueprint. And at the heart of many DevOps systems, there's this thing called continuous integration and continuous delivery, which sometimes gets confused with continuous deployment. So CI/CD, which has the problem of integrating software changes, accomplishing a candidate software release artifacts, and then acceptance testing those artifacts, preparing them for deployment, and actually deploying them. So DevOps CI/CD really has to do with that center portion of this gray area. A value stream goes all the way out from planning through to operations. So value streams are actually a broader concept than a CI/CD or pipeline, but they're definitely related. An enterprise may have many of these. A small startup may only have one, but typical enterprises have, literally, the ones I work with have thousands of pipelines, especially if they've matured to the point where they have their applications partitioned into microservices. So you'd have a pipeline for every single microservice, and these could be very short, they could be long, whatever, but they're basically following steps like this. They're often, your specific may vary, but fundamentally there's planning, development with integration, creating artifacts, and then making sure that they're ready for delivery and deploying them to production. So that's if you like, a software value stream. There's a layer on top of that to keep track of metrics and orchestrate activities for the CI/CD. That's usually associated with technology, or at least an architecture layer in your process called application release automation. Some people call it application release orchestration, but it's really helping you automate your release processes. And a layer above that is value stream management. And again, this can be technology or procedures, but the modern way of doing it is to have some tools that keep track of the entire value stream and can orchestrate activities, whether they're people activities or processes or tech, other tools, but they're orchestrating activities across the value stream and providing analysis and insights to what's happening on these value streams. The cool thing about being at this level is they can do that for a whole portfolio of federated pipelines. Let's say you have a service that has many microservices, and a value stream management tool can give you insights and orchestrate the whole combination of value streams. Just to complete the discussion of this blueprint, I mean, all of these processes and procedures do depend on some real systems to work with, the hardware, the processors, memory, networking, and all of that. So underneath you have real infrastructure. With DevOps, you want to be able to serve it up ephemerally as a service or as code, no matter whether it's equipment in a data center or services that you're subscribing to through various cloud service providers. All of that is still the resources that need to be available in order for these processes to work. And then in the upper level, value stream management itself has purposes beyond just orchestrating processes, but the analytics and the orchestration can be used for governance policies, security policies that are more end-to-end, site reliability, which we don't have time to dive into here, and disaster recovery and other big picture things where value stream management can simplify that at an enterprise level or at a larger organization level than an individual CI/CD pipeline orchestrator can do. So that's kind of a big picture of how value stream management fits and value stream maps fit into a DevOps environment. So let's have a little survey question. I'll put up a survey question that I call one in my part of the presentation here. To what extent is your organization using value stream maps today? You don't know, just getting familiar, deciding to implement but not yet. Value stream mapping is being implemented but it's not in production, or it's in production, or we already decided not to use it. So I'm curious to see what people are here to learn. Give it a little bit of time. Okay, so most people, more than about half of the people, don't know. So that's interesting. It's good. This is good to help you learn what it is, and maybe you can find out, or just getting familiar with it. So presumably you have a purpose. So that's like 75% at least of the group. Those are probably the two most, I would say, great reasons for attending a session like this, to learn. And if you're already into value stream, maybe you think you already know, so that's fine, and you wouldn't attend as much. But great. So let's move on. If I can move the slide. So why is value stream mapping important? One thing I would say right up front, there was a recent, actually yesterday, blog article I read that was referring to the most recent state of the DevOps report that Puppet and Dora and other people sponsor. It's a good report. It's been coming out every year for the last 10 years. And it talks about different, things about how DevOps is being adopted and used across, the world, basically. It's a pretty broad, audience that participates in that report. 10 years ago, something like 14% of the surveyed companies were working at a high level of effectiveness for DevOps, called high achievers, meaning that they were deploying software changes very quickly, measured in hours or minutes or hours, rather than days, weeks, or months, and that they had a very low failure rate. So those are the high achievers, and out of that group of high achievers, there was like 14% of the one surveyed. Then there was the low achievers, which were more like the opposite end of the spectrum. Their release cadence was more like every 6 months, and a lot of failures. And it was a fairly low number as well, like 10% at that time. And over the 10 years, they have improved. Now it's more like 18% high achievers and only 5% low achievers. But what's interesting about this is that means that there's a great bulk of people that are still in that, stuck in the middle, if you like, that are not really getting to high achieving level. Um, Maybe they don't feel they need to, but fundamentally it doesn't inform very much about, how um, people are, getting stuck in the middle. And I would argue to say that part of the reason is they're not embracing methodologies like value stream mapping and value stream management, because that's a good way to, get a lot of more performance out of your value streams. And we're going to talk about how you do that. What value stream does is it gives you a very simple visual, so everybody, that has activities or interests in the value stream can understand how flow works for that value stream in their organization. It captures your current state if you have a current state value stream map. It can also be used as a what if tool to, visually play with the visual diagram. Say, well, what if we were to shorten this part or that part, or introduce some tool here? What would that do to the value stream? So it can be used as a what if tool to project a future state value stream model against some goals. It applies really well to software delivery pipelines and DevOps. You can use it for many other things. Like I say, it's been used in lean manufacturing, automobile industry, and many other things. But applying it to software delivery pipelines and DevOps is very interesting, because you're often trying to use lean practices to reduce bottlenecks and deliver software faster at the same time safely. It also maps really well. Once you have a value stream map, it gives you guidance as to how to take advantage of some of the value stream management methodologies and tools and implementations. So there's a lot of good things that can come out of value stream management, value stream mapping. So how do you do it? I talk about a simple 4-step process. I don't think you need to read the whole book to get this, but this is the idea. There's details in the book, and templates and so on to do this. But first of all, identify who's going to participate in a value stream mapping exercise. And usually these are the stakeholders, at least representatives of stakeholders in the value stream. In my consulting, I often encourage companies to pick a model application. Don't try to boil the ocean. Pick one that's representative, and I have a methodology for helping them pick that one. And then we do a really thorough value stream map of that. Who are the stakeholders involved? There's typically 15 to 20 people involved that are representing different parts of the value stream. Have an experienced leader or consultant like myself or somebody else that's familiar with the process to lead the effort. So that's the first step. The second step is to prepare. Don't just walk into a meeting and say, okay, well, now we're going to do a value stream map. It's going to be a waste of time for the most part. Instead, prepare. Tell everybody what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. Most importantly, have something you're going to analyze. You don't do value stream maps just without knowing what you're trying to analyze. You should go in there with a goal. What is it that you're trying to do? If you think about DevOps, there's actually, again, the State of the DevOps report talks about different categories of benefits, and I turn those into goals. There's agility, stability, efficiency, quality, satisfaction, security, stability, did I say? Yeah. So basically, there's all these different kinds of goals. Pick one or two that you're really interested in and do a value stream map around that. So a typical goal would be, we want to improve we want to improve our agility. We want to reduce the lead time measured from when our software changes are committed to our version management system or integration branch until it is deployed. We want that lead time to reduce from, let's say, 10 days to 5 days by, within 4 months. That now you've got a very concrete goal, right? It's not like, okay, we want to improve agility or we want to improve lead times. That's not a goal. It has to be measurable to be really, really good. So the first thing is to get agreement as to what the goal is, and then conduct a value stream management session with the right people around that very, very specific goal. And now you're going to have a really concrete, engineerable result that makes a lot of tangible sense. Conduct the workshop. Usually if it's well prepared, there's something like 2 to 4 hours to get a current state value stream map. It's always exciting. Usually half the people walk into the room thinking, oh, this is kind of boring, probably not going to be interested. And then they get excited when they start to see the action happen, when other people start contributing their part of the value stream information, and they realize, oh, I didn't know that. Wow, wow. and they start to learn from each other. So it's kind of interesting. It's always an interesting exercise if it's well prepared. And finally, document the results. And this is usually an expert or somebody that takes it all and puts it together into a really nice map. Um, there are different methods for doing this. Some people use like sticky notes on on a whiteboard or whatever. Um, that's hard. That's fine. I have a methodology that can be used remotely over a web network or a webinar or a web meeting. Very simple, and it documents as it goes along. Different people have different tools and methods for doing it, but that's basically the process. Here's an example, and this is using the template that I have of an actual value stream map exercise. In this case, the client was trying to reduce the time from committing software changes to their integration environment to the point where it's being deployed to operations. They wanted to know, on average it was taking something like 13 days and 5 hours. That was how we calculated it out. And they wanted to reduce it. I believe in this case, they wanted to get down to seven days. But I can't remember that part. Anyway, the idea is that you first of all decide on what is the set of steps, stages for your value stream. These are typically anywhere from like 6 to 15 stages. You try to map it out in series. Each stage is usually defined by a set of activities that have an output and an input, a defined output and an input. You then try to find out, how long on average. Usually these are averages, the time to process each stage, and any wait times between stages. Maybe you have to wait for approval before you go to the next stage, or maybe you have to get something like a test environment set up before you can go to the next stage. Whatever it is, you basically try to get the timings for each stage and the interstage timings. Also, it's good to collect some of the quality metrics, like what's the percent pass when something is moving from one stage to the next. What percent of the time is it passed through and accepted by the next stage, or the flip side is percent rejected. That's a good way to help analyze the source of quality issues or maybe security issues or other things that are coming in. While you do that, you then talk about, well, what are the contributing factors for each of these stages that are taking up time or affecting the quality, depending on what your goal is, right? This is not only for timing. You can apply this for other goals as well. Maybe your goal is to improve security, in which case you'd be talking about a lot of security issues here and how you can introduce security throughout the pipeline. Other types of goals, but usually it's often the lead time that you're looking at. You can also document things along the way on the same diagram, like your tools, infrastructure, and other things that are whatever is relevant depending on what your goal is. In this case, again, it was mostly timing. Actually, it was two cases. I believe it was timing as well as they didn't want to have quality suffer as they introduced some new things, so they were keeping track of that as well. Okay, so that's a value stream map. And this is the result, a current state value stream map resulting from a value stream mapping workshop. Okay, another survey question. Let me put it up here. What is your highest priority use case that you can imagine for value stream mapping, either your organization or in general, if you like? You don't know. Getting a value stream map that stakeholders can accept and use as a reference, identify lead times in our current end-to-end value stream, identify quality bottlenecks, identify bottlenecks for other things like efficiency, stability, security, or I don't see a compelling use case. Well, I'm glad to see nobody's choosing the last one. I don't know. It's a perfectly valid answer since you're here to learn. But it looks like most people are saying they want to get a map that people can have as a common reference and identify bottlenecks. Yeah, that's pretty typical, sure. But bear in mind, this fifth question is important. You can use value stream maps not only for bottlenecks, you can use them for identifying other things like quality issues, security, and things like even stability. There's a lot of ways you can use this tool of a value stream map. Okay, let's move on. So what about value stream management? We've talked, now that you're experts on value stream mapping, what does value stream management have to do with? And again, there's a link I'm providing here. Um, one of my companies I've worked with is value stream management uh, product vendor, Plutora. There are others, Top, LabNet, a bunch of others. I just happen to, work a fair amount with Plutora. And there's a link that's actually a Plutora presentation that I was involved in. I think it's a pretty generic way to describe what is value stream management and how it's done, so in more detail than I have time for in this webinar. So value stream management is really about managing all of the stages and steps and activities across the entire value stream. So it provides orchestration capability, so it can actually drive things, different activities that happen within each stage and between stages, such as setting up test environments, for example, would be a good one, or maybe orchestrating a policy or an approval process. So it can orchestrate all those things, people, activities, as well as processes and technologies. It can orchestrate that. It can also provide analytics because it's plugged into all the different tools in the tool chains and can feed that data back to their analytics engine and provide insights and analytics for what's happening across the value stream. These can be useful for things like governance policies and keeping track of whatever you're using for governing your systems, notifications, alerts, driving activities that are resulting from operating value streams. So that's essentially what it is. A little survey question now that you know what it is. To what extent is your organization using value stream management today? You don't know, just getting familiar, decided to implement a value stream management, but not yet, or it's not yet part of a production, but you're implementing it, or it's already part of production, or you decided not to use it. Okay, somebody said decided not to use it. Maybe you will after this presentation. Or maybe it'll confirm you don't want to. I don't know. Don't blame me. No question that I see a lot of organizations that are really getting deeper into DevOps are starting to look at value stream management. One thing I didn't mention is that what's cool about value stream management is it can manage a portfolio of value streams or pipelines. And as you get more mature and you have things like multiple pipelines, then you need something at a higher level to keep track of all of that across the organization. If you have governance policies that are for the whole organization, for example, that's where value stream management gets really interesting. Okay, I don't know is by far the most dominant answer, so I'm not surprised. This is a relatively new addition to the world of DevOps, but there are now even consortiums and different things. The DevOps Institute has recently initiated a value stream management consortium, and you're welcome to join that, by the way, if you want to get a lot more informed about value stream management. Okay, excellent. So hopefully this will be informative for you. So here's some of the benefits of value stream management. Really, it shines the most when you're starting to deal with not just one CI/CD pipeline at a time, or not just one value stream, but when you have multiple value streams and you want to do things across them. So if you're looking at an entire site, or groups of applications, or groups of people, different services that may be comprised of multiple pipelines with different microservices or other service-oriented architectures, portfolios of applications, things where you really need to group and be informed about what's happening across multiple value streams. I mean, it has applications even within if you only have one, but really where the becomes really valuable is when you've got multiple. So managing dependencies between pipelines, looking at release planning when you've got multiple pipelines involved, site workload optimization where you're looking at optimizing resources across an entire site or a whole application or product, tracking work across the value streams, ensuring alignment within the business with different policies in general, governance across an entire set of value streams. So these are you can sort of see big picture benefits of managing at this level. How does it work? Well, this is a pretty simple diagram, but basically the green box at the top is usually a value stream management tool that ingests data from the different tool chains underneath to provide analytics and provide the ability to codify policies that involve things from those tools across different pipelines and orchestrate them as well, orchestrate activities. So there's automation capability in these sort of tools as well. Planning and tracking of planned tasks is an example of what value stream can help with. Management can help with coordinating resources like setting up test environments, anything from coordinating a ticket flow all the way to automation of standing up stacks of things and different tools and that are necessary for testing. That's often a major bottleneck in many value streams that I've seen. Analytics, so having information available for postmortems or incident response, coordinating human interactions and exchange of information between people, and again policies and automating those as code and approvals as code through these different tools. Those are capabilities that good value stream management systems offer. This is an example of one. Again, it's not the only one, but Plutor is one that I happen to work with. Others are, like I said, CollabNet, Tooltop, and others. What's common about all of them is they have the ability to work with many other different kinds of tools. They're in a DevOps tool chain, and there are always very many in any mature continuous flow pipeline for any substantial application. There's often 15 to 20 tools in a tool chain just to get continuous flow working and automated all the way from planning through to operations. And then you can add security on top of that. There's another layer of tools. So you can have easily 15 to 30 tools involved in a tool chain that for even any one tool chain or value stream, potentially, if it's a sophisticated application that's well secured. So coordination of data is critical. And you think about that is not only for one value stream, but in an enterprise you have many. This is where value stream management gets particularly interesting. So they work by normalizing the data from the different tools and putting together kind of a common data store for analytics and so you can correlate the data across the whole set of value streams for analysis. So that's one slice of how things work and what a value stream management platform looks like. Okay, so now we're going to shift to some examples that I've been involved in, and I've been involved in many. I think I've been involved in more than 80 different organization level digital transformations that involve either DevOps, continuous testing, DevSecOps, or SRE. And each of those have multiple value streams. I've probably been involved in many different value stream mapping exercises, more than that. So these are some examples. Here is one that's a pretty simple value stream map. This was a large religious, global religious organization. They wanted to reduce. They were actually pretty advanced. They had a digital archive application for their church data. They wanted to reduce the time from, this point where the code was unit tested until it was validated in deployment environment from 14 hours to 7 hours. Frankly, I was impressed that it was only 14 hours. They were already fairly advanced, and this was their current. After the workshop, this was the current state value stream map for that organization, and you can see it was not exactly your traditional pipeline. They were doing coding unit tests, functional testing after that, and then deploying, preparing deployment, integrating, and then system testing and deployment and validation. The 14 hours. You can see where the major time was being spent. It was in creating tasks and then preparing the test environment. That was 7 hours and 3 hours. So that was 10 hours out of the 14 already. And then the next biggest was, I guess, running some tests. So after we got this map and agreed to it with everybody involved in the discussion, we said, well, what could we do about this? How could we turn it into 7 hours instead of 14 hours? So everybody agreed that tackling the largest bottlenecks through automating test environments, merging the functional and acceptance test stages into one integration stage, which just make a more traditional, pipeline looking pipeline would be good. So that's how we decided the future state would look. Okay, another example was a large financial firm. In this case, they wanted to reduce the time from backlog all the way to production from 21 days to 10 days. And so, we spent quite a lot of time with a large group deciding, what are the major contributing factors for the timings for their value stream? What is the value stream? What are the major contributing factors? In this case, the 21 days, a lot of it was in test creation and coding, a little bit on training for new features before that. Functional testing and regression testing was 4 to 5 days. And there was a large gap of wait time setting up between functional testing and doing acceptance testing of 8 hours, 8 to 16 hours. So after that, creating this current state, we said we needed to attack those gaps. And again, in this case, it was to automate the test environment setup, apply test-driven development methodologies to improve the test creation, and get some, other people helping through the development, participating in that, automating test execution more, so there wouldn't be such a big gap here. And that was targeted. The current future state value stream map, that would get it down to 10 days. I don't have time to go through all the different steps we did, but that gives you an idea. Another example, a network appliance manufacturer, they already had continuous flow, but they, like a lot of organizations, hadn't, they put off integrating the security controls into their pipeline. They wanted to get a pipeline working first and then integrate security controls. So it was they were already quite far advanced in their continuous flow, and they wanted to now say, okay, now we're ready to include security. The trouble with that is they've already got some expectation as to what their flow rates are, release frequency and lead times, and adding in security controls was only going to slow things down, which wasn't acceptable. So I'm not going to show you the whole work effort here, but the idea was, if you think about adding security controls at every step in the in the value stream, there's a lot of things. I'm not going to go through all of these, but let's say you wanted to add, I don't know, pen test automation and continuous delivery. That needs to be automated, or it could slow things down. So you have to be careful what of getting too far ahead of yourself without thinking about security. If you have applications that are security sensitive and have risks, don't leave it to the last minute. Otherwise, you may end up having to, if you like, back up and slow down your pipeline later, which may not be nice from different points of view to have to back up. So I always profess that you should, even at the beginning of a DevOps transformation, think about security. This idea of not only DevSecOps, but SecDevOps, where you're thinking of security right up front. Okay, so those are some examples. How can you, in your environment, get started with value stream mapping and value stream management? I've already given you some good references, and hopefully this webinar is helping you a little bit. Just to take an example, this is a large insurance company. They were creating basically a modern version of an existing insurance policy application that was used across, literally globally. Their current state value stream map is a little more complicated, and this is not unusual. Sometimes they're not just serial maps. You may have some branches and that, but they weren't actually 100% sure what their timings were, because they never had yet accomplished a release of this new version of their app. They thought it would take 45 days to complete the release, but they were aware, because that's where they were at the time that we were doing this work, how long it was taking to get up to the point of at least completing some testing. And turns out that they were spending a lot of time in quality assurance in parallel with development, and then they had broken their testing into different groups, different departments, depending on what kind of test was being done, performance testing, end-to-end testing. You can see that the timings here are measured in days, not hours or weeks, but days, up to 55 days just to get a quality test plan together, and up to 40 days just to do end-to-end testing. So those are some of the if you like, critical paths through the value stream that needed to be addressed in this case. When you're doing that and you've got a map and everybody agreed, yeah, that's the right way to represent our value stream, you then look at the, where are the key bottlenecks, rank them. What do you think are the most important? Try to identify where you might make improvements. Maybe this actually it's a different case, but in this case the approvals phase or stage was their highest rank because it took the longest 9 days, so they could automate their approval process. That's a tactic or strategy. The second was to automate the next biggest bottleneck, which was downloading uh, COTS applications from the source of COTS that they were using. And the third was to codify their backlog planning process. So you can see that they wanted to get down to 2 weeks, and this started off being a lot more than 2 weeks. This is a very simplified view of the value stream, but it gives you the idea of how you go about, doing these things. You look at your current state value stream map, you identify where the biggest bottlenecks are, you also identify, what would be the potential impact if you were to shorten them, depending on what your goals are. If it's lead time, then it's typically, timing. If it's quality, then these would be different metrics. And you rank them, and then you start it with some expertise, usually as a consultant and some of the other architects and so on, decide, well, what could we do about this? What actually could we change? What tools, processes, or even people or organization changes could we do to help improve and meet our goals? So in this case, going back to the large insurance company, the solution was to attack those two big bottlenecks through replacing the middle two stages with three, actually, but make them more traditional dev, CI, and staging, and but introduce release automation capabilities and for automating more things end to end rather than having separate processes that were more manual. Introducing some automation in scanning tools and code coverage tools to give them assurance about their quality. They weren't using those things. They were using some manual methods. And QA automation being employed in in development. A new test environment automation framework using value stream management actually to help drive automation. So those are the ideas. They wanted to get down to, they didn't really know because they hadn't really 100% identified how long it would take them for this first release, but they knew that 45 days was not a good number for the future. They were talking about maybe 2 weeks instead of 45 days. Okay, so that's an example of what you can do to, this is the future state for that large insurance company after we made that analysis. So it's a much more traditional looking value stream, and we identify specific improvements throughout the value stream of what we could do to get it down to 10 days from integration through to deployment. Okay, that's basically the primary content for this webinar. I want to point out that at the DevOps Institute, which I'm a part of and that Learning Tree is a partner of, has a lot of cool courses. A lot of them do involve value stream management concepts and value stream mapping concepts. So the DevOps Leader course, the DevOps Foundations course are a good place to get started. If you're a leader, definitely that's a good one. If you're just trying to understand DevOps in general, Foundations. If you want to know more about security in DevOps, the DevSecOps course. Continuous testing. I actually wrote the continuous testing course. I was the author. If you want to know more about testing, I often find, as you can see from the prior examples, testing is often the biggest bottleneck, so I think that's good to understand. Agile process owners. Agile can help a lot with value streams and have Agile service management. The continuous delivery ecosystem course is more technical, more for like architects. I was actually the author of that as well. The site reliability engineering Foundations course helps with imparting the wisdom of production back up the value stream, and value stream mapping can help with that as well. There's some other courses coming along, I know. There's a practitioner's version of the site reliability engineering course that's now available, and some others under development. But fundamentally, the DOI has courses that especially help with the strategic level of these things, understanding foundational level, which is a good thing to understand before you get into the details I like to use the analogy learning tree has, where you want to start learning by understanding the trunk and the branches of your learning tree before you get into the details, and that's what this is all about. And that's my part of the talk. I'm going to turn it back over to Jen, and I hope you learned something.
Thank you so much, Mark. So this slide has a couple of more courses outside of the DevOps Institute suite of courses. So Learning Tree does offer a wide variety of training that could help you with value mapping, value management, and overall value delivery. Many titles in the Agile project management and IT service management space. Just to let you know what you can expect after this webinar, we did get a couple of questions about this. You will receive the slides and a recording of this event after the event. Typically within a week, you'll get an email and it'll have those items in it. It'll also have a link to download Marc's book, his ebook. That link will be live throughout the month of August, but don't delay in getting your copy of that because it'll only be available through August 30th. And now with that, now it's time to go over some questions. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat pod for Marc, and we'll get those answered for you. I see a couple coming in right now, so that's great. To start it off here, my apologies. There's also some poll questions at the bottom. If you could take a moment to answer these final poll questions so we can see how you think we did and maybe queue up some great topics for you for the next event. Okay, so Marc, here's our first questions. Is value streams a subset of Agile methodology for problem solving?
I guess you could think of it that way. I mean, Agile, the original Agile manifesto was not specifically targeted at value stream management, but certainly value stream management and mapping methodologies can help make your software, development more agile. So in that sense, it's, in and of itself, it doesn't give you agile, and agile in and of itself doesn't give you value stream. Uh, Agile DevOps is a little bit more of an end-to-end value stream concept. So I would say it relates to both Agile and DevOps, but especially with DevOps and pipelines.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, many teams and organizations are using different frameworks and methodologies like Agile, DevOps, project management, Lean, SAFe, ITIL, IT service management. Can value stream management help outside of DevOps then?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a universal framework, as we all know. I sometimes wish there were, but I've not really seen an attempt to do that. But fundamentally, yeah, value stream management can help with Agile. It can help with, I don't know where. Maybe I don't know whether there is anything prescribed in ITIL about value stream mapping and value stream management per se. But many of the ITIL procedures, do relate to making how you can make improvements to value streams in different parts of the processes and that. But where I've seen it used mostly is how to accelerate pipelines for DevOps, and the DevOps framework, because it's more of an end-to-end framework of continuous delivery. That's where I see it being used most readily. It can also be used with site reliability engineering frameworks, and like I mentioned, DevSecOps frameworks to try to identify where can you inject the wisdom of production with site reliability engineering better than you're doing now. It can also be used for, where should we inject more security controls in pipelines. So it can be used in a lot of different ways. It's a pretty valuable tool. I think the more and more people are beginning to understand it, and especially as you get more maturity across your value streams, pipelines, it starts to become more relevant. Yeah.
Great. Any recommendations for online VSM tools that would help to facilitate interactive mapping with remote teams?
I can't say I do have a recommendation right now. I mean, I have my own tools because I find most of the tools that I've seen are too complicated. I tend to keep it really, really simple. I literally have some templates that are like a PowerPoint template and an Excel template, and I find that they work just fine for anything that I've ever run across. Most of the other tools tend to overcomplicate things, in my opinion. So I may be a little biased in this regard, but there are process engineering tools that come out of even hardware engineering. So in my mind, they're all way too complicated. This is not a precision instrument. Value stream mapping is meant to give you a strategic level of what's happening in your value stream, and to provide the ability to do high level what if constructs for future state mapping. So in my mind, keep it simple, use simple tools, and keep it at the strategic level, because that's really what this is designed for. If you're going to get down to, let's say, really, micro level value stream mapping and process analysis, then sure, you might want to use some more complex tools that have, I don't know, network diagrams and precise timings and all of that sort of thing. But that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question. What recommendation would you have for enterprise architecture governance for Agile projects using DevOps and value streams?
So could you repeat that question, or is it listed here?
Sure. What recommendation would you have for enterprise architecture governance for Agile projects using DevOps and value streams?
Architecture governance in particular. Okay. So first of all, there's a lot of different kinds of governance associated with DevOps and value streams, and that certainly applies. The first thing is you want to encourage groups to use some consistent structures. So I always say that you should have some. If you're a large enterprise with many pipelines, you want to control the number of choices people make. Otherwise, it can get a little out of control. So that's often done through service catalogs or some kind of portal to give you some, if you like, blessed choices for those stacks and pipelines, and those choices should have embedded in them things like consistent feedback and measurement tools, so you can also not only govern the choice of technologies, but also govern the ability to monitor the performance of pipelines and infrastructures and the applications as you're developing and deploying them. So there's different forms of governance there. There's the application component choices, but then there's the performance of how they're doing as they work through the pipeline as well. Also, value stream mapping can provide governance at the site level when you're looking at, should we slow down releases possibly because we're not meeting our SLOs and our air budgets. So SRE practices inform about that, and value stream mapping can be valuable to keep track of SLOs and air budgets to give governance on the overall outputs of DevOps. In some ways, you can think of some SRE practices as governance for DevOps cadence, making sure things don't get out of control and start delivering too quickly, and you want it to be safe. And value stream mapping can help you with that as well. So maybe I hope I answered the question.
Great, thank you. And if anybody else has some questions, there's still a little bit of time here. Be sure to put your question in the chat pod and get your answers into those final polls. I have another question for you here, Marc. When in the digital transformation process should value stream mapping be used?
That's a great question. I have, again, this is in my book, something called a 7-step transformation process. 7 steps are visioning, team alignment, assessment, solution roadmap, realization of an implementation, operationalize, and then expand. So really it fits into that third step, right after you have a vision for that's really well articulated and understood by the organization. Leaders usually do that. Then it's you align around very, very specific goals. At that point, you're ready to do a current state analysis, and there's usually several parts of that. Part of it is an analysis of the application's characteristics and its current state. Another part is to do a gap assessment around current capabilities surrounding that application and identify what's most important relative to industry best practices and gaps. And the third part is value stream mapping. If you understand what your goals and your vision are, and you have that other information, then a value stream mapping exercise and really zoom in on where you need to make improvements for the next leg in your DevOps journey. It is a journey. You can't, jump to the end. Typically, there is no end if it's continuous improvement. But at any point in time, you want to be really clear about what you're trying to do. And during that assessment phase, this is where value stream mapping is most valuable. And after you accomplish that leg in the journey, you want to do it again. It's a continuous process in the long run to keep looking at your value stream map that's always evolving if you're making improvements and seeing where your next bottlenecks are for the next leg in your journey.
Thank you. And what are some critical success factors for value stream mapping?
Yeah, so I think the two I mentioned in the last webinar, having a really clear understanding of the goal. Don't just walk into a value stream map session without knowing what you're trying to improve. Otherwise, everybody's going to be all over the map and you're not going to get a useful result. Also, making sure that people are aligned with, around what the process is, so that, and what the expectations are. Otherwise it can be a bit of a free for all. Make sure that people are prepared to participate in a blameless manner when you're going through the workshop. That they're all trying to come up with a result, which is a good, honest view of the value stream map. Don't expect it to be a precision instrument. Set up the expectations really well, and then you're going to get a really good result that actually has meaning. Those are a couple of them. Anyway.
Great. And are there any limitations to value stream mapping?
Are there any limitations? Sure. Well, one of them I mentioned. It's not a precision instrument. If you get down into the detail level, let's say what's really going on within a particular process step or that, it doesn't really tell you about that. At some point, real expertise takes over. You got to have the expert that says, all right, well, that's a bottleneck, all right, but what are we going to do about it? Value stream mapping itself doesn't tell you the details of. There are many possible ways you might be able to reduce a bottleneck, and that's where you really need knowledge and expertise, consultant or some architects to help you build your future state value stream map. That's an example of a limitation.
Okay, great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, so we can wrap it up now. Marc, I want to thank you for joining for this great presentation today, and I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. Like I said earlier, you should be getting some follow-up resources, including the recording and the slides to this event shortly via email. It'll also be available in your My Learning Tree account in not too long. And with that, thanks one more time, and everybody have a great day.